My favorite quality about Pops is that he's incredibly honest. At least you always know where you stand with Pops. So I like that about him. He's not passive aggressive, he's not sneaky that way. He'll give it to you straight down both barrels.
Beginning with issue number 1, Mike Baron wrote Marvel's The Punisher for over 5 years, approaching it as a straight crime comic, without any superheroes, aliens, or robots. Over the course of 60 issues, Baron elevated the gritty anti-hero into one of the most popular and enduring characters in the Marvel Comics universe. Now he brings that same ultra-realistic intensity to his latest graphic novel, Thin Blue Line. In the middle of a long, hot summer, a police shooting ignites a city. Activists, opportunists, and provocateurs descend to riot, loot, burn, and kill. Thin Blue Line follows Officer Valeria Baca and her partner as their detail guarding the mayor turns into a battle for survival. Ride along on this harrowing tale of two brave law enforcement officers fighting for their community and their own survival in a world gone mad. Eisner winner Mike Baron has created an alarming tale that unflinchingly examines human fallibility on every level. Along with penciler Joe Arnold, himself a full-time police officer, and talented inker Jeff Slemons, they've created a moving and entertaining story ripped straight from today's headlines. Thin Blue Line exposes the defund the police movement and its consequences for society, but several comic book companies have refused to publish it. Now we're asking you to join the effort to distribute it independently and help support the men and women of law enforcement. Get your copy of the only graphic novel to offer an unflinching and not always flattering look at the men and women of law enforcement during a time when we need them the most. Not all heroes wear capes. It's a thin blue line between the rule of law and a world of chaos. Which side are you on? Thin Blue Line by Mike Baron. Order now on Indiegogo.
Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. Yes, it is exciting. I am Pops. I am your host. We're hanging out with another great interview with a comic book creator. Right to my left is Mike Baron, an incredible author you guys will get to know more about. And thanks to Mike so much for joining us and hanging out with us tonight, my friend.
You're welcome.
So it's probably new for some folks. I know I've been promoting this and interacting on some other shows and things like that. And give me like the elevator pitch of how Mike Baron ended up doing comic book stories for a living, for the lack of a better expression.
Well, I always wanted to write fiction. I wanted to write novels, and I wanted to write comics. I was inspired by John D. MacDonald and Carl Barks. My first job out of college was smoking marijuana for the government. I answered an ad in the back pages of the Boston Phoenix looking for volunteers to live on a hospital ward for a month, smoke government-grown marijuana every day, and take a battery of tests. It was just like college. When I got out, I wrote that up, and I sold the story to the Boston Phoenix. So they hired me as a writer, and I became their music editor. But I always wanted to write fiction. I sat down a couple of times and tried to write a novel by the seat of my pants. And I soon realized I didn't know what I was doing, but I always had a flair for writing comics. I don't know why. I just had this unshakable faith that I knew how to do it. And I was working at an insurance company in Madison, Wisconsin, one day in the 80s when I got a phone call from an editor who said, there's a guy down here who's trying to sell us his art, and you should take a look at it. So it was Steve Rude, and I met the dude. He showed me his portfolio, and we agreed to work together. We just happened to be at the right place at the right time. In the Capital City Distribution, the second largest distributor of comics in the world at the time, decided to publish their own books. So
Okay.
I went home and I brainstormed the first 12 pages of Nexus. And I drew it out by hand, which is how I wrote comics for 20 years. I would draw each page out by hand, panel by panel, figure by figure. I'm not a great artist, but I'm good enough that I can get my ideas across and that artists and editors could recognize immediately what I was trying to say. And they all loved that method of writing. Archie Goodwin did it as well.
Mhm.
And so did a couple other guys. I think Chuck Dixon has done it. And it's a very important exercise for those who want to create comics. I would recommend you trying that because it teaches you so many things. It teaches you how much weight a page can bear. But most importantly, it teaches you what happens next, which is the essential question in all fiction. Because I would write panel by panel like an inchworm, inching along, and I do one panel. I try to make that panel count. My focus was on the next moment. It wasn't on the rest of the story, although I had story structure in the back of my mind. It was on the next moment. And I think that's one of the reasons that my comic writing has been so successful, is because I focus on one panel at a time while keeping the story structure in the back of my mind. So I drew those first 12 pages out, and I gave them to the dude, and he penciled them and inked them and lettered them, and we showed them to the boys at Capitol, and they said, yeah, we want to do this, and we were off and running.
Awesome.
And shortly after that, I approached them about doing another book, and I just discovered Jeffrey Butler by his art on a poster down on the University of Wisconsin campus. And I asked Jeffrey to throw in with me. And I said, what do you want to draw? He said, well, I want to draw druids. So I wrote this 10-page story about a peculiar druid who was so cantankerous that the other druids took up a collection and hired the Vikings to put him in a coma, sail west, and drop him off the edge of the earth. But as you know, they didn't get to the edge of the earth. They reached Wisconsin instead. And Jeffrey drew those out. We took them in and showed them to the boys, and he said, nah, nobody wants to read about druids. Give us a costume crime fighter. And I said, Jeffrey, they don't want to read about druids. He said, well, I'm not going to waste these pages. I said, fine. So then I dreamed of the Badger. And the Badger was easy because they said, give us a costume crime fighter. And my first reaction was, why would anybody put on a costume and fight crime? They'd have to be crazy. And I was reading The Minds of Billy Milligan at the time by Daniel Keyes, which is one of the first serious studies of multiples. And it was Madison, so it was Badger this and Badger that, and that's how the Badger was born.
Awesome.
And those books got out, and they started to attract a little attention. And because of that, Carl Potts called me from Marvel and asked me to write The Punisher. And Mike Gold, who'd been my editor at first, moved to DC and asked me to write The Flash. And so I kind of spread into mainstream comics like that. And for 20 years, I wrote mainstream comics.
And that's kind of where I found you the first time was that era of first it was Punisher, and then later it was your work in Star Wars. And actually, the irony is I have a very close friend who's a massive Punisher fan. We were going to do a show together. It kind of fell through, but I basically have reread, I want to say, upwards of like 100 Punisher comics from, like late 80s, like mid 80s to late 80s. So 85 to 87, all the way through into the some of the newer stuff to kind of cover my basis. And I can see why you were on there for so long. It was so grounded and real. And I think that's what's going to, and it's one of the reasons I'm so excited. I think fans are just going to love this project, this Thin Blue Line project that you've got going on, and that's already getting out to fans. So
yes, it seems to have made a splash, but for Punisher fans, I think they'll be even more excited about the Private American, which we're launching next month. Private American is everything Captain America should be, but isn't, with a little Punisher thrown in. That's not his title. He doesn't call himself, I'm Private American. He just says, when people ask him, who are you? He says, I'm just a private American. And he's somebody who's disgusted by the chaos on the southern border. And that's where we meet him when the first book begins. He's down on the southern border intercepting terrorists, fentanyl smugglers, and snakeheads because he can no longer stand by while our government gives away the country. And no organism, neither a single cell nor a nation, can survive without controlling its borders. And that's how it starts. And of course, when he takes action into his own hands, the government becomes very alarmed. He becomes the enemy. And that's the premise of the book. There's a lot more going on there. And if you're interested, we're launching.
I was just going to tell everyone there's a link in the description, folks. If you want to click that, it'll take you over to theprivateamerican, all one word.com. I have it up on my screen. It gives you a little bit of a synopsis of what he was talking about there. It shows you this amazing artwork right here on the front that's done by Richard Bonk. And then, of course, there's a notification email you can put right here to let you get all the information emailed to you whenever those updates come out.
And Richard is over halfway done with the art. This book is going to be completely finished by the time we launch next month.
Oh, that's amazing! That's awesome news. That's just this movement is sort of like it's been swelling for the last several years, and as I said, I kind of had drifted away from comics in a lot of ways and kind of came back. And the last couple of years has just been crazy for me, kind of playing some catch up, and I've kind of been following a lot of you guys, and it was weird for me at first. I'm like, you guys were not just random independent, like when I would cover cons, there were like, Marvel DC folks, and there were some indie folks, but then there were like these tables of like these indie artists. And when we think about crowdfunding artists, we always think about those like the art students trying to break in and that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, that's not the case. Wait a minute. You've got, yourself who basically is like one of the key instrumental people in developing the Punisher, Ethan with the Lantern, Graham Nolan with his work in Batman, amongst other things. I mean, it's just, Chuck is like a goat when it comes to the Batman legacy of DC and that kind of things. And then
Billy Tucci, Art Thiebair, Aaron Lopresti.
It just keeps going. Aaron Lopresti, and you just kind of keep going on this list. You're like, wait a minute, these are not like the schlubs down some random alley at a Comic-Con. These were the headliners for like over a decade of my life, and like these are the people that created some of the most instrumental books in some of these years. I'm going to do an entire stream on 1992. It's the 30th anniversary of some of this stuff, and I want to do an entire stream on some of these big name comics, top selling comics, and that kind of thing. And to see you start with Thin Blue Line and now Private American, you're also like diving in headstrong into kind of like some political wins. Like, I mean, I got to give you some kudos too, man. You're like, listen, like, I'm gonna deal with stuff that's out there, everyone's talking about, and put it in this media.
I have to stress here that my first goal is entertainment, and that's number one. I never lose sight of that fact. And none of these books are preachy or didactic. There are no lectures. Good. There's no long, bold statement by a talking head. It's all about the action. But they're grounded in reality. I've always done that, and I think a lot of writers rip their stories from the headlines. They always have. And some of the most popular writers of our day, like Jack Carr, for example, who wrote The Terminal List, which is on streaming right now, and Stephen Hunter, who's also a movie critic for the Washington Post for many years. Stephen Hunter's wrote many books starring his Vietnam-era sniper, Bob Lee Swagger. In fact, I'm watching a TV series on Netflix based on that character right now. It's called Shooter, but there's nothing unusual about drawing from real events in the real world. And I just want to stress that these books don't preach. They do present a certain viewpoint, as all good literature does. It must necessarily reflect the viewpoint of the writer. But my primary goal is to entertain, and I never lose sight of that fact. And I strive to make every panel entertaining. I don't think there's a wasted word or a wasted panel in any of my books.
Now that you've gone through the Thin Blue Line campaign, I mean, you're going to be involved with the book pretty much perpetually because this is the kind of stuff that you guys create. It's like it's with you now. So What's one of the things that's been like a life lesson from it all? What's one of the things that's kind of like, wow, maybe I didn't see this coming, or I'm going to do this differently, or what's one of those things? Maybe it's a word of advice for someone else down the road, even.
Well, I have lots of advice about writing, and I'm not hesitant about offering it. In fact, I have a YouTube channel where I talk about writing. I post a new link, a new chat every Wednesday. Today, I posted one about the Punisher, in fact, because my wife bought me a Punisher shirt and said, "What are we going to talk about?" I said, "Well, let's talk about the Punisher." But usually it's about technique, it's about the narrative voice, it's about constructing compelling drama, it's about description and building a credible character, things like that, because that's my goal is to cast my net as wide as possible. I want as many readers as possible. Now, there are a lot of people out there that aren't going to go for my stuff. They're going to get their attitude and they say, well, he's anybody who's pro vigilante. Well, that's no good. Only the government should have the sanction to use violence. No, that's not the history of the United States, as we all know. And I'm not advocating anarchy or anything like that. I'm just saying that the vigilante has always had a place in American literature. One need only look at and films. I remember when Charles Bronson, Death Wish.
Yes.
When Death Wish came out, people stood up in the theater and cheered.
I did. I know when I just rewatched it again. I rewatched it probably last year, and I was on like a high all day. It's such a very like taking the power into your own hands sort of story.
And those stories wouldn't resonate if people thought, well, this is a stable society and the machinery of justice does the right thing and they get the right guy and they punish the right perps. But we all know that's not true. Society's out of whack right now. It seems like the government does not really care about the average citizen. And at the same time, does not want the average citizen to have the means of protection. The other day, a guy with a concealed carry permit stopped the mall shooter in Ohio and saved countless lives. I'm not advocating that. I'm not a vigilante. I don't think other people should be a vigilante, but we all know there's something wrong. There's something wrong. Crime is the number one issue on the minds. Well, it's number two. The number one issue is inflation. But the number two issue is crime that's spiraling out of control in city after city. And police officers are way down. They've quit. Many of them quit because of the COVID mandate. Many of them quit because of hostile political governments. People started talking about defunding the police, not crazy people, but politicians. And when that started, my first reaction was, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's like, what on earth?
You're either for the rule of law or you're not. Because if you don't have the rule of law, you don't have civilization. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book.
First off, let's say hey to Agent Atwood and Lovely Sherry are still in the chat, and they've been great, loyal supporters and folks here all the time. So thank you guys for joining us and spending time with Mike. You're welcome to ask questions. I'll try to make sure I can get to them if I can. When you went to kind of like write that process, because this is a little, I don't know, maybe it's not. You tell me. So is it different writing the Thin Blue Line story than writing for the Punisher? Like, how do you what is your sort of process if I want to include this sort of theme, this message, plot points, little elements there with something that's rooted in something that's going to come across as even more real than the Punisher did?
Well, I start with an outline. I didn't used to, but now I'm a firm believer in an outline. And as any writer will tell you, you can do the most detailed outline in the world, but as soon as you start writing, you're going to veer away from it. But that's okay, because the outline establishes what's important about the story. And I also start with character. In the case of Thin Blue Line, I start with police officer Valeria Baca, and we see her out of uniform. We see her at home with her daughter. We see her as a normal human being. before she goes to work. And after we have that introduction, then she's called downtown to be part of the detail guarding the mayor, who thinks he's just going to give a speech because people are very upset. There's been a shooting. They don't know any of the details. They just know there's a police shooting, and huge mobs are forming to protest, to loot, to riot, and to burn. And as soon as the mayor starts speaking, things spiral out of control. And suddenly it's a life or death situation where there's a real possibility the mob's going to completely overwhelm the police and kill the mayor. So they have to take the mayor, a cadre of police protecting the mayor, and they retreat to the city hall. And that's how it starts. And it's about this long night in a large Midwestern city that's coming apart at the seams. And once you establish the character, and you look at what actually happened in a lot of these cities, it was pretty easy to write.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I'm in that same category. During the pandemic, we literally left the big city. I still work in the big city. I come into the city to work, but we actually moved 5 counties away into a little rural farm that my wife always wanted to have.
Wow.
And for me, part of it was our city district attorney was just not going to hold charges to any of the people that were even being arrested. So they were literally being arrested in these, they were started as protests. They become riots and looting, to the point where I wrote an article for my for a local site that I co-own, and I chronicled an individual who was arrested during the daytime on one side of town, and then was released, and then was arrested later the same day, the same 24-hour cycle at a downtown protest and riot. And all those people attacked me and doxed me, and then the attorney wouldn't. The district attorney wasn't going to let. They're going to let this guy out anyway. And I was like, oh my gosh, what? I can't refute anything my wife is saying. Whatever, this is happening literally to me. This is crazy. So
that's the plot of the next Thin Blue Line. It's called The Revolving Door.
Yeah, ooh, that's heavy. That's heavy.
What state are you in?
I'm in Florida. Yeah. Yeah, it was in Tampa when that actually happened. So,
Right.
And so listen, here's Zach's. Hey, Zach's, and he says he got his copy yesterday. Thanks, Mike. Hey, listen, Zach, you throw up one of those reviews too, and there's tons of links there. Connect with Mike.
Thanks, Sax.
Yes, it's awesome. Thank you so much. No, it was. There's a pretty decent sized highway on the west side of Tampa, like towards the airport. It's called Del Mabry. So it's multiple lanes across that you really shouldn't try to walk across. They literally, and this is, I think it was close to even where the football stadium is. They literally blockaded it, and police would not make them move. It created like a 5-hour traffic jam, and it was, there were like people getting hurt because they were trying to get out of their cars. It was just, and I was like, it was nuts. So, and again, Florida was open. Like, so once you got to May of 2020, other places still had lockdowns or whatever. We didn't, it was a free for all here. So cities like Orlando, Tampa, Miami, down South Florida, the bigger the city, the more common these sort of instances were and things like that. So yeah, Florida, it's definitely been kind of a hot spot for us. And I'm interested to see how the fall plays out politically here in this state, because it's going to be a very interesting sort of reading of the thermometer. And I love to see what you're saying, like revolving door, how some of that translates into your storytelling. That's fascinating to me. You got me down. I'm good. Mike, as you moved into sort of like the independent realm, is there someone that sort of inspired you to kind of like, listen, I'm going to self-publish. I'm going to kind of like make my own company and do my own thing. Like, is there someone that you can kind of give a little credit to?
Ethan Van Sciver, Eric July.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see their videos? Did you speak to them directly? How did that kind of manifest itself?
Well, I mean, Ethan killed it with his first crowdfunding thing, and now he's created this movement called Comicsgate, which is like an elephant. With the 12 blind men and the elephant, everybody feels the elephant and they describe it in a different way. And there's no question that there are some elements of Comicsgate that are less than savory, but none of them are among the Comicsgate kings, who are the leaders of Comicsgate, and that includes Ethan, Aaron Lopresti, Billy Tucci, Graham Nolan, Art the Bear, and artists of that caliber. But I mean,
We have
there
to mention
have
John
been
Mailander.
groups.
We have to mention John Mailander. He'll come after us and harass us.
Yeah,
Maybe
John, I don't mean to forget you, John. Don't
he won't let us
forget
forget that you forgot. So we better make sure we throw it.
All right. John, I sent you a record. But as you know, the internet is both a blessing and a curse. For some reason, it brings out the worst in a lot of people. Just having a forum, especially if they're anonymous, an anonymous forum, and Twitter can often be a septic tank of malice and accusations.
Sure.
It's not for me because I have strict rules that I follow. But other people have been getting into these Twitter wars, and including celebrities. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. Celebrities start cursing each other out and so forth. And it's just, I don't know what it is about the internet, but it's a blessing and a curse. And you just have to be able to conduct yourself so as to avoid self-immolation.
So you're saying that it's not likely that you're going to block me for just interacting with you. I tweeted this morning that I accidentally had found out. I don't know exactly. My brain detached on why. I was trying to figure this out, but evidently I'm actually Gail Simone and both Tom Taylor have blocked me.
That's a badge of honor.
Pathetic vanilla.
She blocked me too.
Yeah, pathetic vanilla old pops who does nothing more than ask questions. All I care about is good comic books. All I care about is good art, good stories, good comic books. I'm literally like that OG. I'm a devout Christian who doesn't curse and stir up a bunch of trouble or anything like that. Yep. So the list just keeps getting longer and longer and longer, Mike. So I don't know what to say, man. I tell you, the internet is a cesspool of just chaos, I guess. I don't know. I know I'm like you. I kind of have I guess parameters, like what the rules are, like how do I navigate through. I've deleted Twitter twice. This is my third rodeo, my final rodeo around. So if it just gets too out of control, I'm like, I don't know what to say.
Well, the trick is to not let these trolls get under your skin. I mean, if they become too vile and obnoxious, you can always block them, but you never respond to them. You just don't do it.
Yeah,
they want attention.
Zach promises a review there, so make sure you tag Mike. I will let me post your Twitter and make sure people can connect with you. Since we're throwing Twitter out there, might as well just make it just go all the way.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter as @BloodyRedBaron.
Yeah, got it.
Right. And I have a Substack column, mikebaron.substack.com. I talk a lot about writing there, but there's a lot of funny stuff too. As I get these letters from these scammers, and the letters are very elaborate about how the widow of the great Muammar Gaddafi is trying to transfer $150 million to the United States, and if I'll only supply her with my social security number and my bank routing number, then I will get 10% for my participation. Of course, they never know your name. It's dear sir, I trust you, a person of the highest caliber.
You should do a story where it's actually a legit. Maybe it's like a Florida man story.
There's an old gag that a widow in Nigeria died with $200 million in the bank she'd been trying to give away for years.
Yes. I very, very badly try to transition to Florida Man, which is a great, obviously, being a Sunshine State guy, I'm all about this.
It's funny you should mention that because I'm going to read a little something from the letter column. I was going
to make it big so everybody could see your work there.
Greetings.
By the way,
I hope your day so far has been pleasant. I'm Mrs. Abiha Nozari Mossad. I'm a 71-year-old widow who has in the oil and gas industry in Kuwait with my late husband. My health is deteriorating drastically and my children are fighting over my riches, even when I have given them more than enough. But thank God I'm not dead yet. So I've decided to pledge you the sum of £11.9 million to help me set up a program on my behalf to help the motherless babies less privileged. The £11.9 million is currently deposited into a bank in Europe. If you are really interested in carrying out this humanitarian project, please get back to me as soon as possible so I can forward you the attorney's details who is responsible for filing an immediate request to have the funds transferred on your behalf, blah, blah, blah. And of course, these are letters to Gary Duba, who is the Florida man. Gary says, I'll get right on that, Abiha.
Florida Man's dropping a lot more wide, folks. So we'll make sure that you kind of get an
it's
eye
with
out for
stores
that.
next week.
Yeah, it's great. Alternate cover. Oh, maybe we'll make that bigger there for Mike so he can show that off. It's one of the covers.
Matthew Weldon, the Discovery's genius.
Great stuff. All right, let me go back to this and let me share a couple of
It's
these
Todd
others.
Maulini's cover. And
There's
that's
the
Marcelo Salazar's cover.
there's the Copper Tone parody. Like that. I like that a lot. That's good stuff. It's good stuff. Tell us about Florida Man. How on earth did that come into being? If you don't mind me.
You know, I don't choose my stories choose me. And every time I went online, there was another Florida Man story. So
Yeah, we're pretty notorious. Actually, it's funny you say that. There is a FARC. It was an old website. Is FARC still up, folks? Anyway, I used to have a writer, and we had great success when he would write weird news, and he would pull stuff from FARC because it was like Reddit. People would just post these links. Florida has so much weird news, Mike. They had their own category on FARC. It would be like
they had a page too called FloridaMan.com. Unfortunately, it's down now. I don't know what happened to it.
I know. Yeah.
But anyhow, I mean, we've all seen the headlines.
Yeah.
Florida man claims syringe found in rectum is not his. Florida woman claims cocaine in purse was blown in by the wind. Florida man races down Broadway at midnight on a bicycle naked except for a hippo head. And occasionally I try to work some of these into the novels. There are 3 Florida Man novels now. That's where the comic came from. I've been writing Florida Man novels, and I've started a 4th. And the trick, of course, is to create the most embarrassing and absurd situation you can for the protagonist, Gary Duba. Gary's just a good-hearted redneck living down by the swamp in a trailer. He's got a hair-trigger temper. He doesn't always make the best decisions. He likes to get drunk. He likes to get high. He's been in and out of trouble with the law, DWI, failure to pay child support. But he's got a heart of gold, and he'll give you the shirt off his back, which is a key to the novel's success. Because despite his ups and downs, and he ends up in the most absurd situations you can imagine, he always lands on his feet by the end.
Awesome. It's awesome. I'm actually trying to find you one. It was one of my favorites. I was trying to find it. It's a website I used to write for. I was trying to see if it's still up here, but I don't see it. I will say there's one about the Florida woman's mummified cat went to auction. That was from 2013. I'll share that when it opens. That was good. Oh, and this was a famous story. This was a big story for us. This was a 2015 story I wrote. One of the guys that plays Gaston at Disney, like the guys that dress up or whatever, I guess in his spare time, because they like to work this into the stories, like alcohol was involved, and when stories like this, you're like, well, I hope so. He set off fireworks on his head and it killed him. So that was one. I was like, oh yeah. So the weird stories, they kind of write themselves in Florida. Like it's nuts.
Oh yeah, Disney World plays a big part in the Florida Man stories. Only it's called Wacky World. I don't want to use Disney. It's called Wacky World, created by the great animator Carl Wackheim, and he's got all these characters he created, like Regis Gator, Punk, Skunk, Goth, Sloth, and they're all walking around Wacky World in costumes, of course, and one of them is in a rabbit, Rapid Rabbit, and there's a famous story about a Florida man gets in a fight with a man in a rabbit suit. I'm sure you must have seen that, right?
Yes.
I'm going to send you the. Oh wait, we don't have a link there. Anyhow, that's the subject of the third. One of the subjects of the 3rd Florida Man novel, which is out now. It's called Catfish Calling.
Perfect.
And we have a wonderful cover for an upcoming issue of the comic book, which shows this rabbit punching out Gary while Gary's girlfriend Crystal clings to its back.
This is one for your future references. This is Coco Bennett. This is a 2013 story of Coco Bennett attacking someone with a samurai sword. New day stop. Can't write these stories, write themselves.
You're fading in now,
So
Pops.
my 2013 day. So did I freeze up or something? I have so many windows open. That's what
Yeah.
the problem is. If it did, sorry about that. I will close all these windows, make it work back better. There we go. There we go. There we go. Too many windows open. Too many windows open. Sorry. Yeah, I had like 4 windows. It wouldn't load. These stories are from an old website, and yeah, so they probably are like not particularly user friendly for streaming anyway. So yeah, Florida Weird News, it writes itself. It is insane how much stuff happens down here. Yeah. So yeah, lots of volume of Florida Man can be had, because Lord knows poor Gary has a lot of material that he could face when Mike thinks it up. So I can see that happening. I want to just circle back a little bit to we didn't really touch on Star Wars briefly, because I think that's a weird one to folks. I don't think some folks knew. I've done the stream on. I did a couple streams around Star Wars Day and stuff like that. And I kind of pointed out, one of the things that really kept me in Star Wars was in the 90s when Timothy Zahn books came out, The Dark Empire came out. People have to understand how much we wanted Star Wars comic books again. We wanted Star Wars in any sort of facet. How did you end up on a Star Wars project, and kind of how did you approach that, considering it had such I don't want to say a heavy weighted canon to start with?
Well, Mike Richardson asked me to adapt the Timothy Zahn novels. They were very easy to adapt because Timothy Zahn is a very visual writer. I didn't use any of my own language. Every word in those comics are words that Timothy originally wrote. I'm very proud of them. I think they're among the best Star Wars comics ever done. And they're available. They're in print. They've been in print constantly since the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to showcase them on Tuesday night, actually, on my Talk Hard show, Tuesday nights with Stone Loki. He actually just bought a super mint copy of The Heir to the Empires, and he wants to show them off during our show and tell stream on Tuesday, because once a month or so we do a show and tell. So he'll be showing this off on Tuesday. But yeah, I was just I've been rereading some of those and some of the ones that you did. I was just reading the Rogue Squadron, and it was funny because the pitch in the beginning of the book is about, the battle on the planet where they don't like the rebels or the Empire. And I was immediately hooked, and I thought to myself, how is it that one sentence written back then can intrigue me so much more than all the billions of dollars of crap that they make right now? I was so intrigued by the concept of, it's kind of like the Star Trek philosophy of going to these planets and trying to reach out to people. And some of them are like, no, just get off our planet. That doesn't even really ever come up in conversation in Star Wars. And actually, the Kenobi show was so bad. I was pointing out the Empire was so incompetent in Kenobi. How can you believe they could take over the galaxy? They're so incompetent at every step. And you wrote these stories that are so deep and interesting. Like second and third characters have story arcs, and yet we can't get story arcs in these shows. So, is that painful for you? No,
I don't care. I really don't pay attention to any of the new Star Wars material. I'm at a stage in my life where, in order for me to enjoy a book or a movie, I have to believe that it could really happen. And that depends on the skill of the filmmakers. And that doesn't mean I shun the fantastic, because I love Alien. I love Aliens. I believe those movies absolutely. They nail every detail. They create a credible world that's consistent. But for the most part, my taste runs towards stories that happen in a world I recognize, the real world in which we live. And I'd like to recommend a couple of movies. There's a movie called The Rider about a rodeo competitor who's recovering from a brain injury. And that's the whole premise of the story. It's absolutely brilliant. And I urge everyone to watch it. There's another one called A Prayer Before Dawn. And it's about an English tourist in Thailand who gets arrested for dealing drugs and thrown into a Thai prison. And his only path to redemption is to join the prison kickboxing sequence and distinguish himself as a kickboxer. There's a movie called Let Him Go, starring Kevin Costner and Diane Lane.
I'm going to ask you to pause for 1 second because the writer is very well acknowledged as being a great film. I have not even heard of this, and I'm kind of plugged in a little bit. This is a Clow film. Okay. Maybe I have casually heard about it.
But
you described it, huh?
Which movie? Oh, The Rider.
The Rider. Yeah, The Rider. Yeah, this is very well thought of, but I don't know that it. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I need to spend a minute to watch that. I have not watched that. You got me with that one. I will agree with you on the other recommendation.
Let Him Go. I know I've seen. And Diane Lane as two ranchers living in Montana, whose grandchild is taken away by a bizarre family that lives in North Dakota. Their son marries, they have a child, and then the son dies in a horse accident. And the daughter-in-law remarries into this family of criminals who take the boy to North Dakota, and they see the family downtown before they leave, and the husband shoves the wife, and then he shoves the 4-year-old boy, so they know they have to get him back. And the story is about how they go to North Dakota to save their grandson. And it's absolutely realistic. It's a very credible thriller. I recommend it.
Awesome. I'll have to do a Mike recommends clip so we can make sure we dive deep there. Because that's we need good content. It's one of the themes that we've tried to do with like I said, that Talk Hard stream where we dissected really good and bad and try to offer up positive things that people haven't seen. You don't have to get yourself caught up in all of this. How do you come down on, because obviously the biggest film of the year, this thing is it's still going crazy. And I have to high recommend something which is extremely rare as a critic these days is the Top Gun Maverick film. Did you get a chance to take that in? Do you have any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Thought it was great.
Yeah, I think it because we rewatched Top Gun this last weekend. My wife and I were both like, it's pretty rare that not only a sequel can outdo the original, but I think it exponentially outdid it. Like it seems so much more deep with the other characters. The plot was laid out in a way that you really feel like incredible amounts of emotions. I mean, when that black pilot's at risk, I don't even know his name at that point when I'm watching the film for the first time. Like I don't even know his name, but I'm on the edge of my seat thinking this guy might bite it. Like they're going to try to pull a goose with this guy or something. I was just like, I don't even know this guy's name. That's how well written the script was. I don't know. Is it hard as a writer to watch? Writing is...
No, it's easy. The better the film, the easier it is to watch.
Yeah, but I mean, my point is writing's become a lost art for these people in today's world.
Apparently, there
pains me.
There are people that know what they're doing. There are people that don't know what they're doing. A lot of decisions in the entertainment industry seem to be made without considering entertainment at all.
Yeah, very, very true. Very, very true. I want to get to the show you do, the Baron Earl show, because you guys have some great guests. Like, folks, talk about a link. You need to hop over. Just sub now. You can unsub if you don't like it. You're not going to unsub, in my opinion. Hit the video button and look at just some of the guests. I have rewatched the interview with Jim Shooter now twice in just the last 2 months. I've gone through it twice. So I'm talking about just if you like comic books at all, you want to learn more, you want to understand how it actually operated, some of the history, the name dropping. I mean, I loved it. I'm hooked, man. I'm hooked. I'm not trying to put water on any of the other accomplishments that you're doing, man, but that one, I'm down with that. So,
thank you.
I'm gonna have to get seconds on some of these guests because I'm telling you what, I'm envious. I'm like, oh man, yeah, the Jim Shooter interview was just, I don't know what to say, man. It was incredible. So, when you first got in the business, was there someone that you met or maybe responded to you or kind of made you feel like, wow, I'm actually part of it? Because the one thing I always go back to when I've talked to you guys is just this connection always seems very fluid because you guys pretty much are open about being fans. You guys like this kind of stuff. Like, it's so weird to me to deal with these professionals sometimes. It seems almost like they hate their job. It's like, you get to write picture books for a living. You guys are like, this is strange to me how you treat it. But you guys don't. Most of you talk about being fans of it and who you meet and all this kind of. Is there a person that you look back on like, this is the one guy when I met this person or that person?
There were many. Yeah. Archie Goodwin. Denny O'Neil, Mike Gould, Julie Schwartz.
You have a lot of similar characteristics. Oh, okay. It's fine. I consider it all part of the experience. After working radio where it's all so overly produced, I actually just kind of enjoy the rawness of doing a live stream. I know people mute and stuff, and it's out of respect because it's supposed to be my show, but I'm actually like, I'm not old enough to be a boomer, but I boomer all the time. Like, I literally treat it like a verb now because I'm just, even though
You're reasonably boomer.
Thank you. Well, trust me, if I accidentally hit the red button and you're in charge of the show, you'll know I am, because it happens usually about once a month. I let someone else have control of the entire show because I've clicked the wrong buttons or something. Or like I did before, I got too greedy and opened too many tabs and nearly froze the computer up. So,
did you watch the Bob Layton interview?
Yes. Oh, I've interviewed Bob back in the day. Big Bob Layton fan. And actually, it's funny you say that too, because I had gotten into Avengers as a kid when I was a child and read comic books. And then as I got older is when I kind of got back into it. And I was in college. And I remember reading those Iron Man issues and was like, I was blown away. I'm like, I couldn't believe how good they were. I didn't. And I was so disappointed with Marvel moving away from the heavier themes of alcoholism and even being a sexist and a womanizer. Like, it's very glossed over in the first two films, but it seems like, I don't know. I mean, in hindsight, they're not going to, but I don't know. As a fan, Layton's, yeah, I'd love to talk to Layton again. That'd be great. So, yeah. Look at Awesome One. Awesome One's always got nicknames for me, Mike. Today's going to be Raw Pops. I don't know. I get nicknames. Awesome One missed our show. I don't know if you were still in the chat last night, because I actually was going through Empire Strikes Back trading cards last night because I'm putting them in the Pops vault. Like, they're going into long-term storage, so I'm not getting rid of these Empire Strikes Back cards. And there's a Darth Vader card called the Awesome One, and I would share that. Sorry, inside nonsense, I guess, for those of you that live stream daily or try to aspire to. So
that's another Wacky World character. Awesome Possum.
Awesome Possum. Yes. What is you get like strange? Do you still do cons or anything like that? You still go and do
Very
things
rarely.
like yeah. Me too. I'm out. I'm like, this is so big. Like, it's not fun for me either. So even from like the press standpoint, covering them for so long, it's kind of like I just don't enjoy it all. And this is just so much easier. Like, it's so much easier to connect with you. You can spend an hour or so chatting, talking. If I was trying to cover something or line that up with you, it'd just be a hassle. It'd be hard. It was just, this is so much easier to do. And whatever happens. It feels, you wouldn't get a chance to see me boomer, folks. You wouldn't get a chance to see me ramble on about a Darth Vader card in the middle of a Mike Barron interview. So,
I am doing the Colorado Springs Comic-Con in August, and I'm doing a con in Boston in November. I prefer smaller cons.
Sure.
The last time I was at San Diego Con was about 8 years ago, and it was just overwhelming. You feel exhausted just being there.
Mm.
And of course, they're having the con this weekend, and everybody is forced to wear a mask and show vaccine passport.
So insane. It's just insane. I wouldn't do it. So yeah, just that's not happening. So I'm not participating with any of that anymore. What is I'll kind of let you bail out if you need to on this. Kind of like, is there like a real fun story or something that you'd like that you could share about? I don't know, some of the independent world that you've kind of gotten into, because I think one thing I'm enjoying about it too is that you talk about the Comicsgate Kings is everyone's authenticity coming out more, like a lot more transparency. And I'm not trying to say people were not before, but I feel like part of the connection that we as audience and fan members have is because we get to know you and know more about you and that kind of thing. Is there a funny experience in that though? That's kind of like you're like, wow, if it hadn't been for this whole YouTube experience, I never would have learned that, or I never would have had that happen.
Oh man, I have many stories about
Sure.
comic conventions over the years. A lot of them I can't tell because the scurrilous things that were going on. But my wife wants me to write my biography. I say, I'm not interested in doing that. But Ron Fortier has written an excellent biography. If you want, it's called My Life in Comics, and I recommend it. Occasionally I write about these things on my Substack column, but I try to keep myself out of it. I'm a storyteller, and my own life isn't that interesting.
We'll leave it to Billy Tucci to tell the crazy stories, because he has his fair share, that's for sure. So, tons of links in the description, folks. You can connect to. He just wrapped up Thin Blue Line. We have stuff already in the hopper. How far out do you write, Mike? Because you're already working, basically the Private American's pretty much going through the process. You said it's even going to ship by the end of the year. So
I have projects that I wrote years ago that are just coming to fruition now.
Right.
Because the artist bailed or the publisher bailed. But if I take them out and look at them and think it's a good story and I see an opportunity to revive them, I will.
That's awesome. Isn't it exciting to see the Ripaverse thing too? Like, it's poured more water into all of this to raise it all up. Like, there's so much, it's almost like free publicity for everyone. Because I've already had 2 or 3 normies at my job who've asked me about it all because of Fox or because of whatever. I said, well, yeah, but he's not the only one. I can give you a list of 20 more. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, here, you got a little notepad? Let me give you, I'll tell you what, give me your email. And I've sent like emails listing, because I have stuff behind me. Like, I can't see it. My camera's too far back, but Tucci's books right there. I have a stack of books right there. It's like, so this is all part of it for me. Because I have not, the only new comics I have bought from stuff that's been published in the last 5 years that's not part of all this is Boom Studios, which is an independent comic book too, but different. Yeah. So tons of stuff in the descriptions. It's been awesome to be able to spend some time with Mike, get to know him a little bit, give you some sort of introduction to him and his career, stuff he's been working on. And I can't appreciate it enough. So thanks for all that. And as always, folks, I always try to send you out on a happy note. It's just remember, look, make tomorrow better than today. Be blessed. Go out there, just be honest, be yourself. Just try to enjoy all this stuff. And that is, to steal from the Tuesday show, talk hard. And of course, take time to chill. So let me show you how to chill with Bobby.
All I do is chill. My life is a thrill for